Almost half of 100 drones at the Wine and Dine Festival performance were damaged after GPS jamming. The mega bridge's passenger flow yesterday in line with the government's previous estimates. And murder charges against a Pennsylvania man in connection with yesterday's synagogue shooting.
Good evening. Bad news for Wine and Dine Festival goers as tonight's drone performance was cancelled. This as more than 40 of the 100 drones crashed into Victoria Harbour last night after GPS jamming by an external party. Christy Lung with the details.
No drones to light up the sky at the Central Harbourfront this evening. That is the Hong Kong Tourism Board called off tonight's drone performance at the Wine and Dine Festival. Last night, something went wrong during the 6 p.m. show when some of the drones fell into the harbour. The performance was halted and the show scheduled for 7:30 was called off. We sincerely apologize to everyone for what happened, said Anthony Lau, Executive Director of the Hong Kong Tourism Board. He said the drone's global positioning system was interfered by an external party. The signal was so badly jammed that some of the drones couldn't follow commands. As a result, they were not able to land on a barge as instructed. More than 40 drones were damaged in last night's incident. During their debut show on Thursday, 100 drones with LED lights flew above Victoria Harbour, celebrating the 10th anniversary of the Wine and Dine Festival. A drone expert said the GPS reception of a drone can be easily interfered with.
Maybe it is around a few hundred meters. The GPS reception signal may be being jammed or interference, so the aircraft GPS system will not work, and the positioning is not available. So the aircraft may drift away with the wind, so it is possibly a danger.
Professor Wong Kam-fai, Associate Dean of the Engineering Faculty at the Chinese University of Hong Kong, said the interference can be done within a short period of time, making it hard for police to trace the culprit. He urged the governments to tighten rules on drone operations, including whether the operators have a backup plan to control the devices when the automatic system breaks down. Christy Lim, TVB News.
Both the traffic and passenger flows of the newly opened Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge hit a new high yesterday. In fact, the 59,000 passenger trips recorded were in line with the government's estimate made back in 2008. But some travellers have complained about inadequate choice of restaurants at the Hong Kong port. Caleb Long has more.
Today is the first Sunday since the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge opened to traffic. Many tour groups came to Hong Kong from Zhuhai by way of the mega bridge. This woman said the ride to Hong Kong took only half an hour compared with more than an hour by ferry. But with the increased number of visitors, there were long queues for public buses to different parts of the city. This woman said she had been waiting in line for half an hour. Outbound traffic, on the other hand, was much smoother. Yesterday, around 2,700 vehicles crossed the bridge, with the number of passenger trips going up to around 59,000. While the number of vehicles using the bridge is still far below that predicted by the government 10 years ago, the passenger flow is in line with the previous estimate. Many shop spaces at Hong Kong Port remain vacant. Some travelers have complained about inadequate choices of restaurants there. The government believes as travelers' demand increases, more vacant shops will be leased out. Meanwhile, developer Gordon Wu, who first came up with the idea of a bridge linking Hong Kong with the western side of the Pearl River estuary, thinks there are ways to boost the number of users. Speaking to TVB News, he suggested building a multi-story car park at Hong Kong Port to attract more traffic from the mainland and Macau. Nonetheless, he believes the bridge will help enhance economic development in the territory. Caleb Leung, TVB News.
A man yelling, "All Jews must die," opened fire right as people were praying at a synagogue in the U.S. city of Pittsburgh. Saturday's mass shooting left 11 people dead and 6 others wounded before the gunman was arrested.
7-1, contact, shots fired.
The Squirrel Hill neighborhood was shocked to hear gunshots and were told to shelter inside.
We have multiple casualties inside the synagogue. We have 3 officers who have been shot.
It is imperative that the neighbors in the community surrounding the Tree of Life Synagogue stay in their houses and shelter in place.
Right as Bowers tried to flee the scene, he was confronted by responding local and state police along with SWAT teams. That's when a shootout ensued and Bowers barricaded himself inside the synagogue.
Oh, we got a guy barricaded actively shooting at SWAT operators. We got 1 operator shot at this time.
After police shot Bowers several times, he finally surrendered, leaving behind a murderous bloodbath.
It's a very horrific crime scene. It's one of the worst that I've seen. There are multiple fatalities. There are at least 6 injuries, to include 4 police officers. The police officers' injuries at this time are non-life-threatening. The other individuals are critical and serious in nature.
The alleged shooter's social media footprint revealed a motive for hate. He was against Jews, immigrants, and President Donald Trump. On this site, he wrote, "Screw your optics, I'm going in." As the shooting is being treated as a hate crime, Bowers has been charged with 11 counts of murder.
Members of the Tree of Life Synagogue, conducting a peaceful service in their place of worship, were brutally murdered by a gunman targeting them simply because of their faith.
President Donald Trump initially stated it's a shame the synagogue wasn't armed for protection.
If they had some kind of a protection inside the temple, maybe it could have been a very much different situation.
Later at a convention in Indianapolis, Trump condemned the shooting and called for unity.
The vile, hate-filled poison of anti-Semitism must be condemned and confronted everywhere and anywhere it appears. We must all rise above the hate, move past our divisions, and embrace our common destiny as Americans.
Trump also called for flags at the White House to be lowered until the end of this month, and a show of solidarity in Tel Aviv, where the flags of both the U.S. and Israel were projected to remember the victims.
The leaders of Turkey, Russia, France and Germany have lent their support for a UN-backed political process to end the Syrian civil war in a summit held in Istanbul. A final statement from the 4 leaders also called for the convening of a committee by the end of the year to work on constitutional reform for free and fair elections in Syria. No United States, Britain nor Iran and Saudi Arabia at this conference, but perhaps their presence wasn't necessary, given the leaders of Russia, Germany, France and Turkey were in Istanbul to discuss the conclusion to the civil war in Syria. Vladimir Putin, Angela Merkel, Emmanuel Macron and Recep Tayyip Erdogan all stressed the importance of maintaining a lasting ceasefire in Syria. Erdogan also said all leaders agreed that Syria's constitution has to be rewritten to accommodate any future political settlement once the civil war ends. We made a call for the Constitutional Committee's establishment process to be completed as soon as possible, said Erdogan. We hope that it will be established by the end of this year. The Turkish president also said he raised the subject of allowing and helping refugees to return to Syria on a voluntary basis. Still, violence this week in the last remaining major rebel stronghold has highlighted the fragility of any deal to avert a massive Syrian government offensive and avoid more bloodshed. Turkey, which has given support to some groups of rebels seeking to overthrow Syrian President Bashar al-Assad, and Russia, Assad's main foreign ally, brokered a deal last month to create a demilitarized zone in the Idlib region in northwestern Syria. Idlib and adjacent areas are the last stronghold of the opposition, which rose up in various forms and guises against Assad in 2011. The area is home to an estimated 3 million people, more than half of whom have already fled to other areas,
as government forces retook territory previously held by rebel forces.
Brazilians are voting today in the second round of a presidential election, which is expected to hand victory to far-right candidate Jair Bolsonaro. A desire for radical change among many Brazilians after years of turmoil has fueled the rise of the former army captain. His supporters are adamant he will fight crime and corruption if elected president. Bolsonaro has won over voters by painting a picture of Brazil at war with criminals, corrupt politicians, and leftist ideas that can turn the country into Venezuela, a failed state. He has promised to change the tide with force and clean governance. Heading into Sunday's vote, polls showed Bolsonaro with a double-digit lead over his rival, leftist candidate Fernando Haddad of the Workers' Party. And still to come in our newscast, the helicopter of the Thai billionaire owner of Leicester City Football Club engulfed in flames after a crash. The government defends its proposal to scrap the MPF offsetting mechanism.
Live. Korea. Metropolis. Nature. Freshness. Variety. Culture. Passion. Sky. World. 港鐵朗屏站自然都會生活，朗城匯。
Here in Hong Kong, the MPF offsetting mechanism is accused by some in the business sector of adding more than $800 billion in costs to employers over the next 25 years. The senior government official today criticised the accusation of being an exaggeration. Kena Chu reports.
It seems like the business sector still wants to retain the offsetting mechanism of the mandatory provident fund scheme. Some chambers of commerce published an advertisement on newspaper saying that cancelling the mechanism will increase labor costs by at least $840 billion over the next 25 years. That's after the latest policy address suggesting enhancing government support for employers when eliminating the mechanism. This includes extending the period of the second-tier subsidy to 25 years. Together with the previous 12-year first-tier subsidy, the subsidy scheme will be increased to nearly $30 billion. In a blog post today, Secretary for Labor and Welfare Law Chi Kwong criticized the accusation of being exaggerated. He noted the scenario will only happen under impossible circumstances. This includes that none of the more than 3 million employees resign from their jobs in the next 25 years. Another scenario was where no one gets terminated within 5 years of employment. The last situation was where no business closes down in its first 2 years of operations in the next 25 years. Law also explained there was no retroactive period in the cancellation of the MPF offsetting mechanism. He noted that under the new arrangement, severance and long-term payments will need to be recalculated from scratch. The increase in cost will be roughly 2.2% on average, similar to a one-year inflation which can be absorbed by businesses. Kena Chu, TVB News.
Strokes kill more than 3,000 people in Hong Kong every year, partly due to the limited time allowed for treatments. But some doctors say a relatively new therapy for the condition could help save more lives. Haley Zhou has details.
In 2016, there were more than 10,800 people in Hong Kong suffering from acute ischemic stroke, a common type of stroke caused by blood clots. Mr. Chu suffered from internal carotid artery occlusion this year. Luckily, his friend took him to hospital early enough. Doctors were able to administer a thrombectomy on him and remove the blood clot in his brain. In about an hour, he could move again. But not everyone is as lucky as Mr. Chu. In 2016, only about 7% of stroke patients received intravenous thrombolysis, a conventional treatment in which a drug is injected to dissolve the clot.
The main concern really is the timing. Most of the hospitals in Hong Kong right now are still adopting a 3 hours therapeutic window. Just because the earlier the better.
But doctors say there is another option, mechanical thrombectomy, which can be administered within 6 hours. Doctors use a wired cage-like device called a stent retriever to remove a large blood clot. This method, introduced in Hong Kong in 2015, is practiced only about 20 times per year at less than 5% of local hospitals, as it requires specific expertise and equipment. But doctors say people should know about it.
We need to have a good public education so people can seek service when they have symptoms.
Doctors stress that timing is critical in treating stroke, saying that the most important thing is to identify the symptoms and seek treatment as early as possible. Haley Zhou, TVB News.
Overseas again, Pope Francis wrapped up a month-long meeting of bishops that addressed controversial issues. Topics included clergy sex abuse, giving women a greater role in decision-making, and welcoming gays into the church. Each topic was voted on by 250 bishops, 30 young people and a few nuns, before being approved in a 60-page final document. In it, the bishops stopped short of issuing an apology for decades of sex abuse by priests. This came after Pope Francis made it clear the Catholic Church was being persecuted and dirtied by accusations from the devil. The most controversial topic was how to deal with homosexuals.
I think some of the Africans, bishops, simply said, hey, this is not a priority for us. Our people are hungry, our people are being killed in wars, they're forced to immigrate, our young people are being trafficked. Still, the document does say that LGBT people, although it doesn't use the word, that they should be treated with respect, they should not be discriminated against, and they should certainly not suffer from violence. And that the Catholic community should accompany them in their journey towards the Lord.
And that's our news. Have a great week ahead.
Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.